Get ready because we're giving you 50 pickleball tips to skyrocket your game right now.
We'll break it down by category so it's easy to follow along, starting with the golden rules of pickleball. First, you need to know about spin continuation. The two most common types of spin are top spin and back spin. But here's the thing, my opponent's top spin is the same as my back spin. So if I wanted to apply top spin to a shot that my opponent applied top spin to, I would have to completely cancel the spin and then start it again the other way, which is really hard to do. So in general, you want to apply the opposite spin that your opponent applied to the ball before.
Another awesome tip is to hit the ball after it's peaked off of a bounce. It's much easier to hit it after the ball starts falling back down because it takes away the pace and the spin of the ball.
Before your opponent hits any shot, you want to be in this position and slightly squatting down. That way, when they hit the ball, you can explode in either direction. But to do this, you need to master the split step. To split step, take one final step and then put your feet out wide like this and then start to lower your body. You don't want to split step forward. Instead, run up, take a step, split step, you're good to go.
Don't get mesmerized by your shots. Yes, later in this video, we're gonna show you how to hit really cool shots like ATPs and Ernes, but it's important to prepare for the next shot after you hit an amazing one, because it might come back and you need to be ready.
Clear communication with your partner is a huge advantage, but you have to keep it concise. If you're hitting a third shot and you're about to drive it, you can say something like hard. If you're gonna hit a drop, you can say something like soft. If a ball is going out and you want your partner to know that, you can just say out. After you hit a good third shot drop and you want your partner to approach, you could say we're in. If you hit a third shot high and you want your partner to say back, you could just say back.
This one's huge and underrated. Watch the ball all the way through contact. It's a game changer and completely changes how consistent your shots will be. The only time you can't do that is when you receive a volley. You're gonna have to react a little bit faster and you probably won't be able to watch the ball all the way through contact. So that's the only scenario not to, but overall, watch the ball every single shot.
You have to know about the seesaw effect when you're in the transition zone. So when you start at the baseline, your paddle should be near the ground. And if a ball goes above your paddle, then you know it's out. As you move forward into the court, your paddle should get higher and higher and higher. When you're in the middle of the court, if a ball is hit above your paddle from here, you also know it's out. And then finally, when you get to the kitchen line, your paddle should be around your shoulder / chest height. And if a ball once again hit above your paddle, you know it's out.
The seesaw effect is also very useful at the kitchen line because it helps you respond to your opponent's shots. For instance, if Shay's paddle goes up, my paddle needs to get low because I'm about to block the ball from his attack. Or if Shay's paddle gets really low and he's about to hit a high dink and roll it up, I can raise mine because I'm about to attack his ball. So use the seesaw effect to respond to your opponent's paddle.
So using the seesaw effect, you can anticipate your opponent's shots, but never guess. If we're in a dink rally and I'm about to get sped up on and I guess my backhand and I get a ball hit to my forehand, I have to go from my backhand all the way to my forehand, and that's way too long of a time, and I'm gonna pop that ball up. Instead, stay still and respond to the ball that's hit to you rather than reacting prematurely.
This next tip is super easy. Use what's working in a match. For example, if a ball comes to your opponent's backhand and they immediately make an error, you found a weakness. Just start targeting that backhand pretty much throughout the entire match until they fix the error. Keep it simple and target the weakness. When you're hitting shots with one hand, you want to use your offhand as a counterbalance. So for example, if you're at the kitchen line and you want to reach in super far, you can use your left hand to reach back behind you and balance you as you move forward. If this hand was in front or beside, I'd probably fall into the kitchen. Additionally, you'll see all the pros using this in their dinking and third shot drops. When they're dinking, they have one arm up and to the left, bent at 90 degrees, and it acts as a counterbalance, and also it begins the motion of every shot. Remind yourself every single match to get lower. The best athletes in any sport play low, and the same is true for pickleball. You're more athletic when you're low, and you're able to generate more spin and power. Make sure your third shots have plenty of margin. Aim high over the net. It's much better to aim high over the net than it is to hit into the net. Plus, even if you hit it a bit too high, the ball comes back with less pace. Additionally, keep your third shots away from the sidelines. Balls on the sidelines are more likely to be earned or returned at an angle, which is more difficult to defend. So if you can aim towards the middle, typically solves the riddle. Another big thing is to respect other players' third shots. You don't have to attack every single ball that comes back over the kitchen, even if it's a little high and seems like it might be attackable. Better to be safe than sorry. And lastly, remember spin continuation. It's much easier to slice a heavy topspin ball that's coming towards you than it is to add more topspin on top of the spin that's already on the ball. For example, Shay's gonna hit with heavy topspin. Look how easy this drop is for me.
You want to get really good at resetting from transition. To do this, you want to stay low and try to make contact with the ball out in front of you. This is why it's okay to miss third shots high, because if you get good here, then you can easily get into the kitchen. In transition, you might have to short hop a ball like this, which will take all the spin and pace off of the ball. Usually you want to prefer doing this over taking a ball out of the air. Additionally, instead of short hopping or taking it low out of the air, you can just take one step back, wait for that ball to peak, and then make contact with it.
Now we're moving on to lobs. The best time to hit a lob is actually out of the air at the kitchen line because it takes time away from your opponents. But the catch is that shot is actually a good bit more difficult, so it's gonna take some practice. A great time to use that lob is when your opponents have either just run up to the kitchen after a return or are leaning in expecting to poach the ball. And the best spot to hit a lob is cross court over your opponent's backhand. You've got more court to work with when you're hitting cross court, and it's a more difficult shot for them to return.
Poaching tips. Whenever your partner is hitting a third shot drop, you can go slightly into the court and look back at them, and then you can make a decision if you want to run all the way up to the kitchen line or stay back at the baseline. You can use your opponent's paddle as an indicator if you should come in or stay back. If your opponent's paddle is low to the ground, then it's likely that they're hitting up on the ball and you can approach the kitchen. If your opponent's paddle is going high into the air, then they're probably hitting down on the ball with a smash and you should stay back at the baseline. As you get more advanced, you don't have to look at your opponent's paddle. You can actually just look at your partner's body language, and if they're stable and look like they're gonna hit a really good third shot, then you can probably approach the net freely.
When it comes to serves, aim for their backhand or body 90% of the time. It's that easy. Another great option, maybe for that other 10%, is at the end of a match. Try a lob serve because your opponent is likely nervous and are more likely to make an error.
If one of your opponents is really good at poaching and crashing the net, it might be in your best interest to return to them so that they have to stay back and hit the third shot. If your opponents don't have great drives, then a high lofty return might bait them into hitting one of those not so great drives that either goes out into the net or one that you can easily block back.
When you dink, you should be locking your wrist. You can actually generate a lot of spin with a locked wrist. The most important thing is the paddle angle and the direction you want to hit. A really loose wrist leads to more variable shots. Look at what all the pros are doing. They're locking their wrist. Now let's break down the dinking lift push rule. Whenever you receive a push dink, which means a dink that is pushing you back into the court, you should lift as a result. It's more defensive and allows you to get back into the point. Vice versa, if your opponent hits a lift dink, it bounces high, that's your time to push back. So play by those rules and your dinks will be way more consistent. But never lift a lift dink. You don't want to hit dead dinks. When you do lift a lift dink, you're basically letting your opponent speed up at you, so would not recommend. But if they're bad at speed ups by chance, you could actually use that to bait them and set up a counterattack. Also, don't try to push a push because you're probably not going to make the shot. So play to your opponent.
You want to disguise your speed ups to look like your dinks. On your speed ups, you don't need to have a big backswing, but instead you'll use just a little bit more wrist than usual. A great place to aim your speed ups are at your opponent's right shoulder, left shoulder, or their hips. Usually you don't have to hit the ball hard, you just have to locate it well. When you're speeding up, always look for that next shot to come back and then hit a winner. It's very rare that your first attack wins the point. You can use deceptions in your speed ups by doing shots like the Kyle to throw off your opponents and make sure they have no idea what's coming next.
When you hit an overhead, be sure to point at the ball before you make contact. It helps you get a consistent gauge of the distance and gives you a point to reference. Also, when you're hitting an overhead, be sure to turn your hips before you hit it. That gets your hips involved and adds much more power to the shot. Lastly, be sure to finish down and across your body. That's gonna be a more consistent shot and allows you to keep the ball in the court with more power. And don't forget to use your wrist when you make contact with the ball. That allows you to generate even more power and create even more angles.
I know that we all want to hit around the post shots or ATPs. Here's how you do that. First, look for balls that are landing shallow in the kitchen, close to the sideline, and usually ones that have top spin. When balls land here, you have a better chance of hitting it into the court than if it was further back. You want to wait for the ball to get super low to the ground. Since we're outside of the net post, you don't have to worry about going above it, so you can keep your shot super low. And you want to hit with side spin so it travels back into the court rather than top spin, which brings it back onto the ground.
And if you want to defend those ATPs, you should see the shot happening and then take several steps back and keep your paddle as low to the ground as possible. For drives, all of your power comes from your hips and not from your arm. So you want to make sure to use the full rotation of your body when you're making contact. When you're aiming your drives, make sure to aim for their right side hip. Most people prep with their backhand, like we mentioned earlier, so it's best to hit here, which forces them to do what we call a chicken wing, which is really awkward, and they're probably not going to make it back over the net.
This is the simplest way to set up an Ernie. When you're hitting your dinks, try to hit shots that make this person turn their hips towards the sideline. When you see this happening, they're likely going to hit it across the net high, and then you can Ernie. Generally for right-handed players, you want to jump off your left foot and put your right foot close to the sideline and the net like this. This keeps your forehand over the kitchen the entire way. If you want to hit a backhand Ernie from this side of the court, it's easier to hit with a pancake than it is a traditional backhand.
That was 50 tips. Subscribe to our newsletter for even more tips on a regular basis, and we'll see you in the next video.
Peace.